Hearts and Cons, the full story. Part 1. The ghost returns. The first thing she said wasn't hello. It was my full name. Not the one on my doorbell, but the one I hadn't used in years. The one buried under layers of false identities, burned documents, and careful distance from anyone who remembered. I know who you really are, Aaron Blake. My hand froze on the doorframe. That name hadn't been spoken aloud in 3 years. Not since the Meridian scandal. Not since I'd watched everything I'd built collapse in 72 hours of leaked documents, courtroom drama, and death threats that forced me underground. Rain hammered the city behind her. Neon lights from the bodega across the street bleeding into the night like watercolor bleeding into wet paper. She stood perfectly still in the downpour, dressed like someone who never worried about money or consequences. A charcoal coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Eyes that studied me the way a surgeon studies an incision. You disappeared after the Meridian scandal, she continued, her voice calm as a flatline. Changed cities, changed your name, changed your work. But you didn't change your skills, did you? Every instinct I'd honed over 15 years of investigative work screamed at me to close the door. Deadbolt it. Pack a bag. Disappear again. Instead, I stepped aside. That decision would cost 3 lives before this was over. She didn't sit when she entered my apartment. She paced, like a lawyer preparing closing arguments, like someone who'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times in front of a mirror. My husband is lying to me, she said, pausing at my window to stare out at the rain-soaked street. About everything. I watched her reflection in the glass. Victoria Hale. I'd recognized her the moment she'd said my name, though I'd never met her in person. You don't move in investigative circles without knowing the power players. Victoria Hale was tech royalty, the kind of woman who appeared on magazine covers with headlines like "The Woman Who Built Tomorrow" and "How Victoria Hale Disrupted Everything." But standing in my apartment, she looked less like a titan of industry and more like a woman who hadn't slept properly in months. What kind of lies? I asked carefully. She turned to face me. The kind that end marriages. The kind that destroy legacies. The kind that make me wonder if the man I've been sleeping next to for 12 years is planning to destroy me. You could hire a private investigator. I did, she interrupted. 3 of them. They found nothing, which means either my husband is innocent, or he's better at hiding things than anyone I've ever met. She paused. That's where you come in. I'm not in that business anymore. Yes, you are. You're just selective about your clients now. She moved closer, and I caught the scent of expensive perfume mixed with rain. I want you to become his closest friend. Gain his trust. Get inside his life. Extract his secrets. And if I refuse? She finally looked directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. Not anger, not desperation, certainty. Then I send what I have on you to the people who still want revenge for the Meridian case. She placed a tablet on my coffee table with the deliberate care of someone laying down a winning hand in poker. I didn't want to look. Looking meant acknowledging this was real. But my eyes betrayed me. Photos scrolled across the screen. Documents with my real name. Bank account numbers I thought were buried. Names of people I'd wronged, or who thought I'd wronged them, in the Meridian investigation. Addresses of the 3 places I'd lived since going underground. She'd found everything. You'll be paid more than you've ever earned, she added, her tone businesslike now. $200,000 up front. Another $300 when you deliver actionable evidence. And when it's over, you disappear again. Permanently. With enough money to do it right this time. Clean slate. New identity. New life. My mouth was dry. What if I find nothing? What if your husband is innocent? She smiled then, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Oh, you will find something, she said. Everyone has secrets, Aaron. Everyone. You of all people should know that. She moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, I make other arrangements. She glanced back at me, and trust me, you don't want to see what my other arrangements look like. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood in the silence of my apartment, listening to the rain, staring at the tablet she'd left behind. I knew I should refuse. Every rational cell in my body knew this was a trap. Victoria Hale hadn't become a billionaire by making fair deals. Whatever game she was playing, I was going to be a pawn, not a player. But as I scrolled through the documents on that tablet, evidence of every mistake I'd made, every person I'd hurt, every bridge I'd burned in the Meridian case, I realized something terrible. I didn't have a choice. Victoria Hale had made sure of that. Part 2. Meeting the mark. Ethan Hale was not what I expected. I'd spent 2 weeks preparing, reading every article, watching every interview, studying every photo, building a profile of the man I was supposed to infiltrate. Tech mogul, venture capitalist, heir to old money who turned it into new money through a series of brilliant, aggressive investments. The kind of man who appeared on panels at Davos and gave TED Talks about disrupting traditional industries. I expected arrogance. I expected the casual cruelty of someone born into privilege. I expected a man who treated people like investments, valuable when they performed, disposable when they didn't. Instead, I met someone who seemed tired. We were introduced at a private investor dinner Victoria had arranged. She'd positioned it perfectly. Mutual friends, shared interests, organic circumstances. Nothing that would raise suspicion. Ethan shook my hand with genuine warmth. Victoria mentioned you're in strategic consulting. That's fascinating. What industries do you focus on? The lie rolled off my tongue smoothly. I'd practiced it 100 times. Tech startups looking to scale. Risk assessment. Competitive analysis. He listened. Actually listened. Asked follow-up questions. Remembered details. Within an hour, he'd invited me to join him at a venture capital symposium the following week. It's insufferably boring, he admitted with a laugh. But at least the company would be better. That was the first warning sign. Not that he was dangerous, but that he was likable. The symposium was exactly as boring as he'd promised. 4 hours of PowerPoint presentations about market disruption and growth metrics. But afterward, over drinks at a hotel bar, Ethan transformed. He loosened his tie, ordered whiskey neat, and started talking about his marriage. Do you know what it's like, he said quietly, to live with someone who's always watching, not looking, watching, like you're a problem she's trying to solve? I kept my expression neutral. Sounds difficult. She doesn't listen anymore, he continued, staring into his glass. She calculates. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every gesture is strategic. He looked up at me. Do you think people can forget how to love? Like, genuinely forget? That sentence lodged itself in my chest like a warning I couldn't quite decode. Maybe they just love differently than they used to, I offered. He smiled sadly. That's a diplomatic way of saying yes. Over the next 3 months, we became friends. Real friends, or at least what felt like real friendship. We worked out together at his private gym, grabbed lunch between meetings, met for drinks when Victoria was traveling for business, which was often. He confessed things to me, regrets about his career, doubts about his choices, fear that he'd become the kind of man his father had been, successful but empty. I have everything, he told me once, sitting in his car after a particularly brutal workout. Money, influence, recognition, and some nights I lie awake feeling like I have nothing at all. I reported everything to Victoria, every conversation, every confession, every vulnerability. Her responses were always the same, short, clinical, devoid of emotion. Good. Keep pushing. What else did he say? Find the weakness. Never concern. Never confusion about why her husband felt so isolated. Just hunger. One night, 6 months into the operation, Ethan got drunk. Not tipsy. Drunk. The kind of drunk where masks slip and truths spill out like water from a cracked dam. We were at his downtown penthouse. Victoria was in Singapore for a tech conference. It was just us, expensive bourbon, and the kind of silence that demands to be filled. Can I tell you something? He asked, words slightly slurred. Of course. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at me with eyes that were suddenly, strikingly sober despite the alcohol. If something happens to me, he said carefully, she'll look innocent. My heart rate spiked. What do you mean? Victoria, he said her name like it tasted bitter. If I disappear, if I have an accident, if I suddenly die, everyone will think she's the grieving widow. They'll never suspect her. Ethan, that's... I'm not being paranoid, he interrupted. I'm being realistic. You don't know what she's capable of. What she's already done. What has she done? He stood up, swayed slightly, then steadied himself against the back of the couch. Nothing I can prove. That's the genius of it. She's too smart to leave evidence. I should have pressed harder. Should have demanded specifics. Instead, I reported it to Victoria exactly as it had happened. Her reply came within minutes. Good. He's cracking. Keep pushing. I need to know what he thinks he knows about me. No concern that her husband believed she might kill him. No shock. Just tactical calculation. That was when I started to realize I might be working for the wrong person. But by then, it was already too late to stop what I'd set in motion. Part 3, the flash drive. 3 weeks after Ethan's drunken confession, he gave me something that changed everything. A flash drive. We were having coffee at a small cafe he liked, the kind of place where billionaires could sit unnoticed because nobody expected to see them there. He slid it across the table in a plain envelope, his hand shaking slightly. If I vanish, he said quietly, give this to the press. Not the police. The press. They're harder to buy. I stared at the envelope. Ethan, what's on this? Insurance, he said. The kind that keeps you alive as long as it stays hidden. You're scaring me. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Good. You should be scared. I am. I wanted to open it right there. Demand answers. But Ethan stood up, dropped cash on the table, too much cash, and walked out without another word. I sat there for 20 minutes, the envelope burning in my pocket like evidence at a crime scene. I didn't tell Victoria. For the first time since this operation began, I didn't report something. Instead, I went home, locked my door, closed my blinds, and plugged the flash drive into my laptop with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. What I saw rewrote everything I thought I knew. The drive contained thousands of documents, emails, financial records, legal correspondence, photos, audio recordings. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. Just fragments of business deals and investment portfolios. Then I saw the pattern. Insurance fraud, staged accidents, false claims, a paper trail that led back to Victoria's first company, the one that had made her fortune 15 years ago. The company everyone believed she'd built from nothing through brilliance and determination. She'd built it on fraud, carefully orchestrated insurance scams that had netted her millions before she'd pivoted into legitimate tech investments. The perfect crime, old enough that no one was looking, successful enough that no one questioned it. But Ethan had been questioning it. For years, apparently, he'd been collecting evidence, building a case, preparing for the day Victoria turned on him, because he knew she would. And then I found something that made my blood turn to ice. A file labeled contingencies. Inside were profiles. 6 of them. Private investigators Victoria had hired over the past 3 years. People brought in to test Ethan, to see if he would confide in them, to measure how paranoid he was, how much he suspected, how vulnerable he might be. 4 had found nothing. 2 had found minor indiscretions, enough to be useful as leverage but not enough to destroy him. And then I found my own file. Aaron Blake, Michael Torres, current alias recruited, 8 months ago. Objective? Establish trust. Exploit vulnerability. Determine if subject will confide details about insurance fraud investigation. Status: active, subject showing promising trust indicators. Next steps: if subject fully confides, recommend immediate action to neutralize threat. I read it 3 times. Then I understood. Victoria hadn't hired me to spy on Ethan. She'd hired me to test him. If Ethan trusted me enough to tell me about her crimes, it meant he was ready to move against her. It meant she needed to destroy him first. I wasn't the con man. I was the trigger. The final trap designed to catch Ethan the moment he tried to save himself. And I'd walked right into it. Part 4. The truth. I drove to Ethan's penthouse at 2 in the morning. Didn't call. Didn't text. Just showed up and pressed the buzzer until he answered, voice thick with sleep. What's wrong? Everything, I said. Let me up. Now. 5 minutes later, I was in his living room, the flash drive in my hand, my carefully constructed cover story crumbling like sand. I need to tell you something, I said. And when I'm done, you're going to want to kill me. I told him everything. Who I really was. How Victoria had found me. The blackmail. The surveillance. Every report I'd sent her. Every word he'd confided that I'd betrayed. He listened in complete silence, his face unreadable. When I finished, he walked to the window and stared out at the city lights for what felt like an eternity. I know, he finally said. My stomach dropped. What? He turned to face me, and I saw something in his expression I'd never seen before. Not anger, not betrayal, calculation. I've known for 3 months, he said calmly. You're good, but not that good. You asked questions too strategically, pushed conversations in directions that served someone else's agenda. I had you followed, had your background checked, your real background. I couldn't breathe. Then why? Because I needed someone Victoria trusted to see the truth about her, he interrupted. I needed a witness she couldn't discredit, someone she'd sent herself. He moved closer, and I realized how badly I'd misjudged everything. The flash drive was a test, he continued, to see if you'd give it to her or keep it. When you didn't report it, I knew I'd found what I was looking for. What's that? Someone who might actually help me survive this. He sat down, suddenly looking exhausted. Victoria's not just committing fraud, Aaron. She's planning to kill me. Has been for at least a year. How do you know? Because they already tried once, he said quietly. 6 months ago. Car accident. Brake failure. The mechanic who inspected it afterward found evidence of tampering. He's in my files. My hands were shaking. Why didn't you go to the police? With what evidence? A suspicious brake line? Victoria's too careful for that. If I'd gone to the police with accusations and weak evidence, I'd look paranoid or abusive. She'd have won. He looked at me directly. You're not the first person she hired to get close to me. You're just the first one who warned me. The room felt too small suddenly. Too hot. What happened to the others? 2 disappeared after reporting I was clean. 1 died in a hiking accident. 1 recanted everything they'd told Victoria and moved to another country. He paused. None of them had your particular expertise. Your ability to disappear. Your understanding of how people like Victoria operate. What are you asking me to do? Ethan leaned forward. Help me survive this. Help me expose her. And when it's over, we both disappear. Together. That was the moment everything changed. Not because of what he was asking, but because of what I realized I wanted to do. Not for money, not to escape my past, but because somewhere in the past 8 months, this had stopped being an assignment. Part 5. Going underground. We had 72 hours to prepare before Victoria returned from Singapore. Ethan had a plan. He'd been building it for months, waiting for the right moment, the right ally. We can't just expose her, he explained, spreading documents across his dining table. She has too many connections, too many lawyers, too much money. Any accusation we make, she'll spin. She'll make us look like the criminals. So what do? We disappear, he said. Both of us, simultaneously, in a way that looks like we're dead but leaves enough questions that people start digging. That's insane. It's survival. Over the next 3 days, we worked like people preparing for war. False identities, offshore accounts, untraceable communication channels, safe houses in 3 different countries. Ethan moved money carefully, small amounts from dozens of accounts, nothing large enough to trigger alerts. He arranged for trusted contacts to leak information to specific journalists at specific times, built a cascade of evidence that would go public only if we both vanished. Mutually assured destruction, he called it. If she moves against either of us, everything goes public. The only way she survives is if we both disappear completely. We barely slept, barely ate, worked in shifts while the other kept watch. And somewhere in those 72 hours of shared paranoia and desperate planning, something shifted between us. It started small, his hand brushing mine while passing documents. Eye contact that lasted a beat too long. The way he said my real name, Aaron, like it meant something. The night before Victoria's return, we sat on his balcony at 3 a.m., too wired to sleep, watching the city breathe below us. I never thanked you, Ethan said quietly. For what? Getting you into this mess? For being honest. Finally, he looked at me, Do you know how rare that is? Someone actually telling the truth? Everyone in my world lies. About everything. Their intentions, their feelings, their loyalty. Everyone wants something. I wanted something too, I reminded him. Survival. But you could have gotten that by betraying me. By giving Victoria what she wanted. He paused. Why didn't you? I didn't have a good answer. Or maybe I did, and it scared me too much to say it out loud. Instead, I said, because some lies are worse than others. He smiled slightly. That's not an answer. It's the best one I've got right now. We sat in silence for a while, and then Ethan did something that changed everything. He reached over and took my hand. Not aggressively, not presumptively, just took it, like it was the most natural thing in the world. When this is over, he said, if we survive, I don't want to be alone anymore. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Ethan. I know it's insane, he interrupted. I know this whole situation is fucked up, and we're probably both going to die, and this is the worst possible time for... He stopped, took a breath. But I need you to know, in case we don't make it, in case this all goes wrong, I need you to know that these past few months, getting to know you, trusting you, it's the most real thing I've felt in years. I should have pulled my hand away, should have reminded him this was survival, not romance, should have kept the boundaries clear. Instead, I squeezed his hand back. We'll make it, I said. Both of us. I believed it when I said it, which made what happened next so much worse. Part 6. Victoria's move. Victoria came home early, 12 hours before we expected her. No warning, no explanation. I was at Ethan's penthouse when his phone buzzed with the security alert. She's in the building, he said, face draining of color. We scrambled, hid documents, cleared browser histories, tried to look casual, natural, like we hadn't just spent 3 days planning our mutual disappearance. The elevator chimed. The door opened. Victoria stood there in a cream suit, pulling a carry-on suitcase, looking every inch the exhausted businesswoman returning from international travel. Darling, she said, smiling at Ethan. Then her eyes found me. Aaron. What a pleasant surprise. My mouth was dry. I was just leaving. Don't, she said, stepping inside. I'd love to catch up. I feel like we haven't properly talked since you and Ethan became such good friends. The way she said good friends made my skin crawl. She ordered coffee from her housekeeper. Made small talk about Singapore. Asked Ethan about his week with the casual interest of someone who already knew every detail. Then she turned to me. Aaron, I have a business proposition for you. Something I'd love your expertise on. She pulled out her tablet, a different one than she'd left on my coffee table months ago. There's a company I'm considering acquiring. I need someone to do deep background. Find the skeletons. You're very good at that. I'm not sure I have time. I'm prepared to pay significantly, she interrupted. And it would be a shame to have someone with your talents underutilized. The threat was subtle but clear. Work for me, or remember what I can do to you. Ethan's jaw was tight. Victoria, Aaron's already overcommitted. Is he? She looked between us, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. You two have been spending quite a bit of time together lately. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. We're friends, Ethan said carefully. Of course you are. Victoria smiled. That's what I love about you, darling. You're so trusting, so willing to see the best in people. She looked directly at me, even when they might not deserve it. I stood up. I should go, Aaron, about that project. I'll think about it, I said quickly. I left before she could say anything else. In the elevator, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ethan texted me 3 minutes later. She knows something. Not sure how much. Be careful. I was careful. For exactly 6 hours. Then Victoria made her move. It started with a phone call from a blocked number. You have one chance, Victoria's voice said when I answered. Come to my office, alone, or I release everything I have on the Meridian case tonight. You said. I said a lot of things, she interrupted. Plans change. You have 30 minutes. She hung up. I didn't tell Ethan. Didn't call for help. Just grabbed my jacket and headed to Victoria's downtown office building, walking into what I knew was a trap. She was waiting in her office, city lights glittering behind her like a crown of diamonds. Sit, she said. I sat. How long? She asked. How long what? How long have you been sleeping with my husband? My heart stopped. I'm not. Don't, she said sharply. I've seen the security footage. The way you look at him. The way he touches your hand when he thinks no one's watching. The late nights. The chemistry. She leaned forward. Do you think I'm stupid, Aaron? Do you think I don't monitor my own home? I couldn't speak. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria continued, her voice deadly calm. You're going to disappear. Tonight. Leave the city. Change your name again. Forget Ethan exists. In exchange, I'll forget about the Meridian case. I'll forget you exist. And if I don't? She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photos. Me and Ethan on his balcony, holding hands. The moment captured in high-resolution detail. If you don't, these go public, she said. Along with your real identity. Along with evidence that you've been blackmailing my husband. Along with testimony that you manipulated him into a relationship to extort money. She smiled coldly. I can make you the villain in this story, Aaron. Easily. He'll tell the truth. Will he? She interrupted. When his reputation is on the line? When I show him evidence that you've been conning him from the beginning? When I prove you were hired to get close to him? She had me cornered, and she knew it. You have until sunrise, Victoria said. After that, I make other arrangements. And trust me, those arrangements are permanent. I left her office in a daze, barely able to think straight. I had to warn Ethan, had to tell him Victoria knew everything. But when I tried to call him, his phone went straight to voicemail. When I tried to reach his penthouse, security said he'd left an hour ago. Destination unknown. I went back to my apartment and found it ransacked. Laptop gone. Files missing. The flash drive Ethan had given me, gone. Someone had been there. Someone who knew exactly what to look for. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'm sorry, I didn't have a choice. And that's when I realized what Victoria had really done. She hadn't just threatened me, she'd gotten to Ethan first. Part 7. The Frame. The news broke at 6:17 a.m., exactly as the sun was rising over the city. Tech mogul Ethan Hale dead in boating accident. I was in a dingy motel room 15 miles outside the city, having fled my apartment in the middle of the night, when I saw the headline scroll across my phone screen. My hands went numb. The article showed wreckage. Coast Guard reports. Victoria's tearful statement to press. My husband was an adventurous soul who loved the water. This is an unimaginable tragedy. I ask for privacy during this devastating time. I read the article 3 times before I let myself breathe. Because if Ethan was really dead, Victoria had won everything. But something felt wrong. The timeline didn't make sense. Ethan had texted me at 11 p.m. The accident supposedly happened at midnight. But Victoria had been in her office with me until 10:45. The logistics were impossible unless she'd planned this with military precision. Or unless Ethan wasn't dead at all. My burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. Room 247. Now. I grabbed my jacket and walked down 2 flights of stairs, heart hammering. Room 247's door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open carefully. Ethan sat on the bed, very much alive, watching the news coverage of his own death on mute. You're okay, I breathed. He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Relief. Real, genuine relief. I'm sorry about the cryptic text, he said. Victoria's people were watching my phone. I couldn't risk. He stopped as I crossed the room and pulled him into a fierce hug. I thought you were dead, I said against his shoulder. That's the idea, he replied quietly, arms wrapping around me. That's what she's supposed to think. We stayed like that for a long moment before pulling apart. What happened? I asked. Ethan explained. Victoria had contacted him right after I'd left the penthouse. Told him she knew about us. Offered him the same deal she'd offered me, disappear, or be destroyed. But I had something she didn't know about, Ethan said. A friend in the Coast Guard, someone who owed me a favor. We staged the accident, found a boat that matched mine, made it look like I'd gone out alone, created wreckage. Why didn't you tell me? Because she's watching you too, he said. If you'd known I was alive, you would have acted differently. Looked for me. She would have known something was wrong. He took my hand. This way, she thinks she's won. She thinks I'm dead and you're about to run. She'll let her guard down. And then what? Then we release everything, Ethan said. All the evidence, all the documentation. We burn her empire to the ground. He pulled out a laptop, a new one, clearly bought with cash, and showed me what he'd been working on. A website, ready to go live. Every document from the flash drive. Every piece of evidence about Victoria's insurance fraud. Every proof of her attempts to kill him. We go public at noon, he said. When the news coverage of my death is at its peak. Maximum impact. I stared at the screen, at the evidence that would destroy Victoria Hale. What about us? I asked quietly. After this goes live, we'll be targets. Not just from Victoria, but from everyone connected to her crimes. Her investors, her business partners, people who lose millions when the truth comes out. Ethan closed the laptop. I have new identities for both of us. Clean documents, bank accounts, safe houses in 3 countries. We release this, disappear immediately, and don't look back. Together? He squeezed my hand. Together, if you want that. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The blackmail, the lies, the manipulation. 2 people who'd been thrown together by circumstances neither of us controlled, who'd found something real in the middle of calculated deception. Yes, I said. I want that. We spent the next few hours preparing. Ethan set up the website to go live automatically. I created a list of journalists who would receive anonymous tips at exactly 12:01 p.m. We packed bags with just the essentials, cash, documents, burner phones. At 11:45 a.m., Ethan looked at me. Last chance to back out, he said. Not a chance, I replied. At 11:59 a.m., we stood together watching the laptop screen, his hand in mine. The countdown reached 0. The website went live. Evidence flooded the internet. And for exactly 3 minutes, I believed we'd won. Then my phone rang. Victoria's number. I shouldn't have answered. But something made me press accept. Hello, Aaron. Victoria's voice was eerily calm. I assume you and Ethan are together right now, watching the news, celebrating your little victory. My blood ran cold. How? Did I know he was alive? She laughed softly. Please, do you really think I believed that accident was real? I've been tracking both of you since last night. Ethan's face had gone white. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria continued. In about 30 seconds, the FBI is going to receive an anonymous tip about Aaron Blake's location, along with evidence that he's been embezzling from my company, that he manipulated my husband, that he staged Ethan's death as part of an elaborate fraud scheme. No one will believe. They will when they find the money, she interrupted. $2 million transferred from my accounts to yours over the past 6 months. Transfers you didn't make, but that have your digital signature. Transfers that look exactly like blackmail payments. My stomach dropped. You see, Aaron, I've been planning for this moment for a very long time. Every piece of evidence you just released, I've already prepared counter-evidence. Documents showing they were fabricated. Testimony from experts who'll say the files were doctored. Character witnesses who'll swear I'm innocent. The insurance fraud is too old to prosecute, she said. And even if it wasn't, I have enough lawyers to tie it up in court for decades. But you're going to prison. Today. Through the motel window, I saw police cars pulling into the parking lot. Run, Victoria said sweetly. It'll make you look more guilty. She hung up. Ethan was already grabbing our bags. Back exit. Now. We ran, but we didn't get far. Part 8. Interrogation. They caught me 3 blocks from the motel. No dramatic chase. No resistance. Just cold metal around my wrists and cameras flashing from news vans that had somehow already arrived. Ethan got away. I saw him disappear around a corner while police tackled me to the ground. That was the last time I saw him free. The interrogation room was exactly like every TV show depicts. Gray walls, metal table, two-way mirror. A detective who looked like he'd been doing this job too long sat across from me, sliding a folder across the table. You want to tell me what's going on? He asked. I want a lawyer. Sure. But first, maybe you want to explain these. He opened the folder. Bank statements, transfer records, $2 million moving from Victoria Hale's accounts to mine over 6 months. Each transaction meticulously documented, each one bearing digital signatures that matched my encrypted accounts. Accounts I thought were untraceable. These look bad for you, the detective said, understating the obvious. I stared at the documents, my mind racing. Victoria had been planning this for months. Maybe from the very beginning. Every move I'd made, she'd been 3 steps ahead. I didn't make those transfers, I said. That's what they all say. He flipped to another page. We also have emails. Between you and Ethan Hale, discussing how to stage his death, how to steal money from his wife, how to frame her for crimes she didn't commit. Those are fake. They have metadata, IP addresses, timestamps, all pointing back to you. The detective leaned forward. Mr. Blake, or should I call you Mr. Torres? You're looking at wire fraud, extortion, conspiracy to commit murder, identity theft, and about 6 other felonies. You're going away for a very long time. I want my lawyer, I repeated. He stood up. Sure, but lawyers cost money. And all your money? We've frozen it. Every account we could find. He moved toward the door. Think about cooperating. It might be the only thing that saves you. The door closed with a heavy thunk. I sat alone in that room for 4 hours. No Waters, no phone call. Just me and the fluorescent lights and the growing certainty that Victoria had won. When the door finally opened again, it wasn't a lawyer. It was Victoria. She wore black. A mourning widow. Eyes red-rimmed but dry. She looked at me with something that might have been pity if I didn't know better. I told them I wanted to see you, she said softly, sitting down across from me, to understand why you did this to my husband. To me, the performance was flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed her. You're good, I said. I'll give you that. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. I leaned forward as much as the handcuffs would allow. You set this whole thing up. From the beginning, you knew Ethan suspected you, knew he was collecting evidence. So you hired me to flush him out. And when that didn't work fast enough, you framed us both. She tilted her head, as if considering my words. That's a very elaborate theory. Do you have any proof? The flash drive was blank, she interrupted. We checked. Whatever Ethan told you was on it. Lies. Paranoid delusions from a man who'd been having a mental breakdown for months. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Everyone knew he was unstable. The drinking, the erratic behavior. His therapist has records. My blood ran cold. His therapist? Dr. Sarah Chen. She's been treating Ethan for paranoid delusions for the past year. Delusions about me trying to kill him. About secret criminal empires. About conspiracies. Victoria's eyes were hard as diamonds. Her testimony will be very compelling in court, especially when combined with evidence that you encouraged his delusions, manipulated him, took advantage of a vulnerable, mentally ill man. You're lying. Am I? She stood up. Or are you finally realizing how thoroughly I've destroyed you? She moved to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Just like that first night in my apartment. Coming full circle. You should have taken my offer to disappear, Aaron, she said. Now you're going to spend the next 20 years in prison. And Ethan, she smiled. When we find him, and we will, he'll go to a psychiatric facility, where he'll get the help he so desperately needs. He won't corroborate your story. He won't need to, she interrupted. I have enough evidence to commit him involuntarily. And after a few months of treatment, of medication, of therapy, well, memory is such a fragile thing. She opened the door. Goodbye, Aaron. I'd say this was fun. But honestly, you were disappointingly easy to manipulate. The door closed behind her, and I finally understood how completely I'd lost. Part 9, Inside. Prison is a strange kind of time machine. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. The outside world becomes abstract, distant, like a movie you watched once but can barely remember. They sent me to a federal facility in Pennsylvania. Medium security, the kind of place where white-collar criminals serve time alongside people who made one catastrophic mistake. I kept my head down, didn't make friends, didn't cause trouble, just served my time and tried not to think about Ethan, about whether he'd been caught, Whether he was in some psychiatric facility being medicated into compliance. Whether he even remembered me. The trial had been quick. Brutal. Victoria's lawyers had been merciless. They'd painted me as a career criminal who preyed on vulnerable people, who'd targeted Ethan specifically because of his wealth and his marriage problems. The prosecution had bank records, emails, testimony from Victoria's employees about my suspicious behavior, even character witnesses who swore I'd always been manipulative. Going back years, my public defender had tried. But what could he do against a mountain of manufactured evidence? The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 23 years. I'd been inside for 11 months when I met Marcus Reed. He was in his 60s, gray hair, weathered face, the kind of person who'd learned to be invisible in a place where visibility could get you killed. We were in the library, because yes, prisons have libraries. The library might be generous for 6 bookshelves of donated paperbacks. I was reading a legal textbook, still trying to find some angle for appeal, when Marcus sat down across from me. "You're wasting your time," he said. I looked up. "Excuse me? The law books. You won't find your answer there." He studied me with sharp eyes that didn't match his gentle demeanor. "You're Aaron Blake, the guy who supposedly conned Ethan Hale." "Supposedly? I know you didn't do it," Marcus said simply. "Because I know Victoria Hale's work when I see it." My heart rate spiked. "Who are you?" "Someone who made the same mistake you did." I trusted evidence that was too perfect. Built a case against people who seemed obviously guilty. Didn't realize until too late that I was being set up. He leaned back. "I used to be a financial crimes analyst for the SEC. Got a tip about shell companies connected to insider trading. Spent 2 years building a case. And the day I was ready to file charges, I found myself arrested for the same crimes I'd been investigating." Victoria. "Not directly," Marcus interrupted, "but connected. The shell companies I was investigating? They traced back to the same network she used for her insurance fraud. I got too close, so they neutralized me." He smiled grimly. 18 years I've been in here. Life sentence. No possibility of parole. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're not the villain here, Aaron. You're proof." He pulled out a small notebook, contraband, technically, but guards looked the other way for harmless things. "I've been tracking patterns. Cases like ours. People who got too close to certain financial networks. Who asked the wrong questions. Who threatened the wrong people." He opened the notebook to show pages of names, dates, connections. "Victoria Hale isn't working alone. She's part of something bigger. And you getting framed? That wasn't just about protecting her. It was about protecting an entire system." I stared at the notebook. At years of meticulous research done by a man who'd lost everything. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Nothing," Marcus said. "I just wanted you to know the truth before." He stopped. "Before what?" He looked at me seriously. "They're not going to let you serve your full sentence, Aaron. You know too much. You've seen too much. Eventually, someone's going to decide you're too dangerous to keep alive. That's paranoid." 3 of the other people in my notebook are dead," he interrupted. "Suicide, officially. But I knew them. They weren't suicidal." He stood up. "Watch your back. Trust no one. And if you get any communication from the outside, anything unusual, you come find me. Understand?" I nodded, not sure what else to do. Marcus walked away, leaving me with his notebook and a growing sense of dread. That night, I received a letter. No return address. No name. Just 6 words written in handwriting I recognized immediately. "I'm sorry. I didn't have a choice." Ethan's handwriting. My hands shook as I read it again. And again. He was alive. Free. And apologizing. Which meant one of 2 things. Either he'd abandoned me to save himself, or something much worse had happened. Part 10. The Unraveling. Marcus found me the next morning in the yard. "You got something," he said. Not a question. I showed him the letter. He studied it carefully, holding it up to the light, examining the paper quality, the postmark, which had been deliberately smudged. "This was sent 3 days ago from New York," he said. "But look at the ink. It's been exposed to moisture. Recent moisture. Like someone carried it in their pocket in the rain before mailing it. What does that mean?" "It means whoever sent this wanted you to know something without being able to say it directly." Marcus looked at me. "Your friend Ethan. Is he the type to give up? To abandon people?" I thought about the man I'd gotten to know. The one who'd planned our escape so meticulously. Who'd held my hand on his balcony and said he didn't want to be alone anymore. "No," I said quietly. "He's not." "Then this isn't an apology for leaving you," Marcus said. "It's an apology for what he's about to do." "What do you mean?" Marcus handed the letter back. "He's going to testify against you. Or he already has. And someone wanted you to know beforehand." The world tilted. "That doesn't make sense. If he testifies, he implicates himself." "Unless Victoria cut him a deal," Marcus interrupted. "Immunity in exchange for testimony. It's the perfect play. She gets your conviction reinforced. Ethan disappears into witness protection, and any loose ends get tied up permanently." He paused. "The question is, why would someone warn you? Who benefits from you knowing?" I didn't have an answer. But 3 days later, I found out. The warden called me to his office. Unusual. Inmates don't get called to administrative offices unless something serious has happened. 2 federal agents were waiting. "Mr. Blake," the first one said, "we need to talk about Ethan Hale's testimony." My stomach dropped. "He's agreed to testify about your relationship," the second agent continued, "about how you manipulated him, coerced him, convinced him to stage his death. That's not what happened." "We know," the first agent interrupted. I stared at them. What? The first agent pulled out a tablet. We've been investigating Victoria Hale for the past 6 months. Separate case. Financial irregularities in her company's overseas operations. And the more we dig, the more inconsistencies we find in your case. He showed me the tablet. Financial records. The same transfers that had been used to convict me, but with additional metadata that hadn't been presented at trial. These transfers were made from an IP address registered to Victoria Hale's personal assistant, he said. Not from you. Someone doctored the records to make it look like you initiated them. Why are you telling me this? Because we need your help, the second agent said. Ethan Hale is about to testify in a closed hearing. He's going to say everything Victoria wants him to say. And if he does, it buries any chance we have of building a case against her. So stop him from testifying. We can't, the first agent interrupted. He's in protective custody. Victoria's lawyers have access to him. We don't. He leaned forward. But you might be able to reach him. If you're willing to cooperate, how? They explained their plan. I would be transferred to a different facility. One where Ethan was being held temporarily before his testimony. We'd be given a chance to communicate, briefly, carefully, under circumstances that couldn't be traced back to the FBI. You convince him to tell the truth, the first agent said. And we'll reopen your case. Get you a new trial with the real evidence. And if I can't convince him? The agents exchanged a look. Then you serve your sentence, the second one said quietly, and Victoria Hale gets away with everything. I had 24 hours to decide. Marcus found me that evening in my cell. They offered you a deal, he said. How did you? I still have contacts on the outside. People who owe me favors. He sat on my bunk. The question is, do you trust them? Do I have a choice? There's always a choice, Marcus said. But sometimes all the choices are bad. He pulled something from his pocket. Another notebook, smaller than the first. If you do this, if you go, you need to know something about Ethan Hale. He opened the notebook to a specific page. Newspaper clippings, financial documents, photos. I've been tracking him too, Marcus said, because something about his story never added up. The timing, the connections, the way Victoria specifically targeted him. He pointed to a document. Ethan Hale's company made its first major profit 12 years ago. A pharmaceutical investment that paid out massively when the FDA approved a controversial drug, so that drug trial was funded by the same shell companies I was investigating. The same network connected to Victoria's insurance fraud. Marcus looked at me seriously. Ethan Hale isn't just a victim in this, Aaron. He's part of the system. Has been for years. My blood ran cold. I think Victoria didn't hire you to test Ethan, Marcus continued. I think she hired you to test whether Ethan would break, whether he'd talk. And when he started to, when he gave you that flash drive, she moved to contain you both. But the evidence on the flash drive was probably real, Marcus said. Victoria's crimes are real, but Ethan's hands aren't clean either. And I think, he paused, I think Victoria's offer to him wasn't immunity for testimony. I think it was a reminder that she has evidence about his crimes too, that if he doesn't play along, they both go down. I felt sick. So what are you saying? I'm saying be careful, Marcus said, because when you see Ethan again, you need to figure out who he really is. The man you fell for? Or the man who's been playing you from the beginning? He left me the notebook. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I told the agents yes. Part 11, the transfer. The transfer happened at 4 a.m. No warning, no explanation to the other inmates. Just guards showing up at my cell, cuffing me, and loading me into an unmarked van. We drove for 6 hours. No stops. No conversation. Just highway miles and my own spiraling thoughts. The facility we arrived at wasn't a prison. It was a federal holding center. The kind of place where witnesses and high-value detainees are kept temporarily. Sterile, secure, isolated. They put me in a cell that was nicer than any place I'd lived in years. Real bed, private bathroom, window with actual sunlight. You'll be here for 72 hours, an agent told me. Ethan Hale is 3 floors up. Tomorrow morning, there will be a 15-minute window during rec time when you'll both be in the same common area. That's your chance. 15 minutes? It's the best we can do without raising suspicion. Victoria's lawyers are watching everything. If they suspect we're facilitating contact, they'll pull Ethan out immediately. The agent paused at the door. Make it count. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't focus, just paced my cell and tried to figure out what I'd say. I love you. I trusted you. How could you? Tell the truth, please. We can fix this together. Were you ever real? Or was I just another mark? Every script I rehearsed felt wrong. At 2 a.m., I heard something. A soft tapping on my cell wall. Deliberate. Rhythmic. Morse code. I didn't know Morse code, but the pattern was clear enough. Someone was trying to communicate. I tapped back. Random patterns. Hoping they'd understand I didn't speak the language. The tapping changed. Became slower. More deliberate. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. 5 taps numbers? I grabbed the notebook Marcus had given me. They'd let me keep it, surprisingly, and started writing down the patterns. After 10 minutes, I had a sequence. 3, 2, 5, 4, 2, 2, 6, 1, 3. It looked like gibberish until I realized it might be a page and line reference. I flipped to page 32 in the notebook. 5th line. 4th word, don't. Page 42. 2nd line. 6th word, trust. Page 61. 3rd line. 1st word, there were only 2 words on that line. Don't trust them. My heart was pounding. Someone was warning me. But who? And warning me about whom? The agents? Ethan? Victoria? I tapped back, trying to ask who they were, but the tapping stopped. Whoever had been communicating didn't respond again. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, they came for me at 9 a.m. Time for rec, the guard said. My hands were shaking as they cuffed me, loosely, I noticed. Barely tight enough to restrict movement. They led me down 3 hallways, up 2 flights of stairs, through security doors that required retinal scans. And then we entered a common room. Gray walls, vending machines, a few tables and chairs, windows overlooking a parking lot, empty except for one person. Ethan sat at a table in the corner, wearing prison orange that looked wrong on him, staring out the window like he was somewhere else entirely. He'd lost weight. His hair was longer. There were dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there before. But he was alive, and when he turned and saw me, his expression shattered into something raw and agonizing. Aaron, he whispered. The guard uncuffed me. 15 minutes, he said, then stepped outside. We were alone. I crossed the room slowly, unable to trust my legs, and sat down across from him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ethan said, I'm so sorry, and I didn't know whether to believe him. Part 12, 15 minutes. They told me you were cooperating, I said quietly, that you were going to testify against me. Ethan's eyes were red-rimmed. I know what it looks like. Then explain it to me. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you sold me out to save yourself. That's not what happened. His voice cracked. Aaron, they have my sister. Everything stopped. What? My sister, Melissa. She lives in Portland with her daughter. Has nothing to do with any of this. Doesn't even know about Victoria's crimes or the investigation or... He took a shuddering breath. 3 weeks after my death, she disappeared. Her daughter, too. 7 years old. I felt sick. Victoria has them, Ethan finished. Somewhere I can't find. Somewhere the FBI can't find. And she's made it very clear what happens if I don't cooperate. He pulled something from his pocket. They'd clearly given him more privileges than they'd given me, and slid it across the table. A photograph. Melissa Hale, bound to a chair, holding a newspaper with last week's date. Terror in her eyes. And next to her, a little girl with Ethan's eyes, crying. Oh my God, I breathed. She sends me one every 3 days, Ethan said, his voice hollow, to remind me what's at stake. The testimony she wants isn't even that damaging to you, Aaron. Just enough to reinforce your conviction. To make sure any appeal you file gets denied. To close the door permanently. Why are you telling me this? He looked directly at me, and I saw the man I'd fallen for. Not a con artist. Not a coward. Just someone desperate and broken. Because I need you to know I didn't want this. Any of this. His hand reached across the table, stopping inches from mine. When we were together, when we were planning to disappear, that was real. All of it. I meant everything I said. But you're still going to testify. I have to, he whispered. If I don't, she kills them. She's proven she can reach anyone, anywhere. The FBI can't protect them if they can't find them. And Victoria, he laughed bitterly. Victoria's made it clear she'll keep them alive only as long as I'm useful. I understood then why someone had warned me not to trust them. Not just the FBI. Not just Victoria. But Ethan too. Because love doesn't mean someone won't betray you. It just means they'll hate themselves for it. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, Ethan said. I just needed you to know that when I testify, when I say things that hurt you, it's not because I don't. He stopped. Started again. It's not because what we had wasn't real. But you're still going to do it. Yes. I should have been angry. Should have yelled, accused, condemned. Instead, I just felt tired. There's something else you need to know, I said quietly. I told him about Marcus. About the shell companies. About the pharmaceutical investment that had made Ethan's fortune. His face went pale. You think I'm part of it, he said. Part of Victoria's network. Are you? I don't know, he admitted. That investment, I thought it was legitimate. But looking back, knowing what I know now, he ran his hands through his hair. God, Aaron, what if I've been part of this the whole time without realizing it? What if that's why she targeted me? Not because I was discovering her crimes, but because I was a liability who knew too much? Does it matter now? He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. Of course it matters. If I've been. He couldn't finish the sentence. Victoria's going to win either way, I said. You testify. I stay in prison. She keeps control. You don't testify. She kills your sister and niece, and probably finds a way to destroy us both anyway. There has to be another option. There isn't, I interrupted. Not one that saves everyone. The silence stretched between us like a gulf. Finally, Ethan spoke. If you could go back to that first night when Victoria came to your door, would you close it, knowing everything that would happen? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Meeting him. The months of friendship that became something more. The balcony at 3 a.m. His hand in mine. The moment I realized I'd fallen in love with someone I was supposed to be conning. No, I said quietly. I wouldn't. His eyes filled with tears. Even though it ends like this? Even though it ends like this? The guard opened the door. Time's up. Ethan stood slowly. Then, before anyone could stop him, he leaned across the table and kissed me soft, brief, desperate. I'm sorry, he whispered against my lips, for all of it. Then he was gone. And I was alone again. They transferred me back to my original prison that night. No explanation. No follow-up from the FBI agents. Just back to my cell and the grinding monotony of prison life. Marcus found me the next morning. Did you see him? He asked. Yeah. And he's going to testify exactly the way Victoria wants him to. Marcus nodded slowly. I figured as much. She always finds the leverage. His sister. I know, Marcus interrupted. I heard through the network. Disappeared 3 weeks ago. Victoria's signature move. She doesn't kill people directly, just makes them disappear until they're useful. Can the FBI find them? Marcus gave me a look that said I was being naive. The FBI is good at building cases, Aaron. They're not good at finding people who don't want to be found. And whoever Victoria hired to hide that woman and her daughter, they're professionals. I slumped against the wall of my cell. So that's it. We lose. Maybe, Marcus said. Then he smiled. Or maybe we change the game entirely. What do you mean? He pulled out his contraband notebook again. I've been thinking about your situation. About Ethan's testimony. About how Victoria has all the power because she controls the narrative. He flipped to a blank page. What if we create a narrative she can't control? How? By doing what she did to you, Marcus said. By manufacturing evidence. By creating a story so compelling, so documented, that even her lawyers can't spin it. He looked at me seriously. I'm talking about building a false case. One that points to Victoria's guilt but uses methods she can't attack without exposing her own tactics. That's illegal? Unethical? Yes. Marcus didn't blink. But so is framing innocent people. So is kidnapping children. Sometimes fighting monsters means becoming one. I thought about everything Victoria had taken from me. My freedom. My reputation. My future. My chance with Ethan. What would we need to do? I asked. Marcus smiled grimly. Something neither of us might survive. Part 13. The Inside Play. Prison has an economy that exists entirely outside the law. Contraband flows like water. Information trades for protection. Favors accumulate like currency. And if you know how to navigate the system, you can accomplish things the outside world thinks impossible. Marcus knew how to navigate the system. Over the next 3 weeks, we built our plan. It started with communication. Marcus had contacts. People on the outside who owed him favors from his previous life. Lawyers he'd helped. Accountants he'd protected. White-collar criminals he'd gone easy on during investigations. He called in every favor. We needed 3 things. Access to financial databases, a skilled forger, and a way to leak information that couldn't be traced back to us. The first came from a former SEC employee who still had backdoor access to transaction monitoring systems. The second came from an inmate Marcus knew in another facility, someone serving time for document fraud who agreed to help for reasons Marcus didn't explain and I didn't ask about. The third was the hardest. We need someone on the outside who won't fold under pressure, Marcus said. Someone without ties to either of us. Someone Victoria's people won't see coming. Do you have someone like that? Marcus hesitated. Maybe. But it's risky. Everything about this is risky. He nodded slowly. There's a journalist. Investigative reporter. She's been trying to build a case against corporate fraud in the pharmaceutical industry for years. Got shut down every time by lawyers and lack of evidence. Why would she help us? Because we're going to give her the story of her career, Marcus said. Real evidence of Victoria's insurance fraud. Documented proof of the shell companies. Financial trails that connect everything. He paused. And we're going to make it look like it came from an anonymous whistleblower inside Victoria's organization. But we don't have that evidence. We're going to create it, Marcus interrupted. Using Victoria's own tactics. We'll build documents that look authentic because they're based on real transactions. We'll forge communications that match her style because we've studied hundreds of her emails. We'll manufacture a paper trail that tells the truth, just not in a way that's legally admissible. I understood what he was proposing. You want to frame her using fake evidence for real crimes. Exactly. That's the only way she goes down, Marcus finished. Victoria's too careful to leave real evidence lying around. But if we create evidence that's convincing enough, it forces investigations. It raises questions. It makes people start digging. And once they start digging, they'll find things she can't explain away. It was insane. It was illegal. It was exactly what Victoria had done to me. When do we start? I asked. Marcus smiled. We already have. The plan unfolded in stages. First, Marcus's contact accessed financial databases and pulled transaction records, real ones, that showed suspicious patterns in Victoria's business dealings. Nothing illegal on its own, but enough to raise questions. Then the forger took those real records and created documents that connected them to the insurance fraud. Fake emails that referenced the transactions. Fake memos that detailed the schemes. Fake communications between Victoria and shell company executives. The forgeries were perfect. They had to be. One mistake. One detail that didn't match. And the entire house of cards would collapse. But the real genius was in the delivery. We didn't send everything at once. Instead, we leaked information gradually. An anonymous email to a journalist here. A document accidentally posted on a file-sharing site there. Breadcrumbs that led investigators toward a conclusion without spelling it out. And we made sure every leak could be traced back to IP addresses and locations that had nothing to do with us. It took 4 weeks to execute. 4 weeks of communication through contraband phones. Of bribing guards to look the other way. Of coordinating with people on the outside while maintaining the appearance of model prisoners. And then we waited. The first article dropped on a Tuesday morning. Pharmaceutical fraud. Connections to tech mogul's empire. The journalist Marcus had contacted, Rebecca Chen, a name I'd remember forever, had taken our bait and run with it. Her article laid out connections between Victoria's early companies and suspicious insurance claims. Nothing definitive, nothing that directly accused her, but enough to make people start asking questions. The second article came 3 days later from a different outlet. Victoria Hale under investigation for historical financial irregularities. The story reported that federal investigators were reviewing old cases connected to Victoria's business empire. It cited anonymous sources, leaked documents, concerned whistleblowers. Victoria's lawyers immediately went on the offensive, denied everything, threatened lawsuits. But the narrative was already shifting. By the end of the week, 4 major news outlets were covering the story. Financial analysts were questioning Victoria's business practices. Investors were getting nervous. And then Marcus made his final move. He leaked one document we'd held back, the crown jewel, a forged memo allegedly from Victoria to her lawyers 10 years ago that explicitly discussed the insurance fraud and outlined plans to hide the evidence. It was fake, completely fabricated, but it was perfect. The memo matched Victoria's communication style, referenced real events, included details only someone inside her organization would know. When that document hit the press, everything exploded. Victoria's stock price plummeted. Her board called emergency meetings. The FBI, the real FBI, not just the agents who tried to use me, announced a formal investigation. And I watched it all unfold from my prison cell, knowing that we'd just committed multiple felonies to take down a woman who destroyed dozens of lives. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt something else. Victory. But Marcus warned me, don't celebrate yet. Victoria's not beaten. Not until she's in a cell like ours. He was right to be cautious, because Victoria had one final card to play, and it involved Ethan. Part 14. The testimony. Ethan's testimony was scheduled for exactly 2 weeks after the scandal broke. In a closed hearing, no media, no public access, just federal prosecutors, Victoria's defense team, and whatever lies or truths Ethan had been prepared to tell. I didn't expect to hear anything about it. But 3 days before the hearing, I got a visitor. Rebecca Chen, the journalist who'd broken the story. She sat across from me in the visitor's room, recorder off, notebook closed, and said, "I know what you did." My heart stopped. I don't know what. "Please," she interrupted. "I'm an investigative journalist. I've been tracking financial fraud for 15 years. You think I can't tell when documents are too perfect? When paper trails are too convenient?" She leaned forward. "The question is, why did you do it? And why should I keep your secret?" I could have denied it. Should have denied it. Instead, I told her the truth. All of it. Victoria's blackmail. The frame job. Ethan's sister. The impossible choice between exposing a criminal and maintaining journalistic integrity. When I finished, Rebecca sat back and studied me for a long moment. "You know what you've done is indefensible," she finally said. "Fabricating evidence, even evidence that points toward true crimes. It undermines everything our justice system is built on." "I know. But," she continued, "sometimes the system fails so completely that the only justice possible is imperfect justice." She pulled out her notebook. "Ethan Hale is scheduled to testify in 3 days, and I have information that Victoria's lawyers are planning to use his testimony to not only seal your conviction, but to discredit the entire investigation into her finances." "How do you know that?" "Because one of her junior associates contacted me," Rebecca said. "Offered me an exclusive interview with Victoria, a chance to hear her side of the story and correct the record. They're preparing a counterattack. Then we've already lost." "Maybe," Rebecca said, "unless Ethan tells the truth." "He won't. He can't. She has his sister." "I know," Rebecca interrupted, "which is why I spent the last 48 hours finding her." The world stopped. "What?" Rebecca pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. A woman and a young girl in what looked like a safe house. Federal agents visible in the background. "Melissa and Emma Hale," Rebecca said. "Found them 2 days ago in a private compound in rural Montana. Officially, they're now in FBI protective custody. Unofficially, Victoria's leverage just disappeared." My hands were shaking. "Does Ethan know?" "He will in about 3 hours," she said. "Right before his testimony. The question is, will he take the opportunity to tell the truth? Or will he still be too scared to trust that they're really safe?" "What do you want from me?" Rebecca looked at me seriously. "I want you to tell me what to do with the information about the forged documents. I could expose everything. Your plan with Marcus, the manufactured evidence, all of it. It would destroy the case against Victoria but preserve journalistic integrity. Or," she paused, "I could stay quiet. Let the investigation proceed based on documents that are fake but lead to real crimes. Let Victoria go to prison based on imperfect justice." "Why are you asking me?" "Because you're the one who has to live with the choice," she said. "Whatever I decide, whatever happens next, you're the one who'll carry it." I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The lies, the betrayals, the people who'd been hurt. And I thought about Marcus's words. "Sometimes fighting monsters means becoming one." "Do what you think is right," I said finally. "I've made enough choices, good and bad. This one should be yours." Rebecca nodded slowly. She stood, gathered her things, and moved toward the door. Then she paused. "For what it's worth, Victoria Hale destroyed a lot of lives. If imperfect justice is the only kind available, maybe that's better than no justice at all." She left, and I waited. Part 15. The final betrayal. 3 days later, the hearing happened. I didn't hear about it until afterward. Until the news broke across every channel, every website, every newspaper. Ethan Hale testimony exposes wife's decade-long fraud scheme. Tech mogul's widow arrested on multiple charges. Victoria Hale, from billionaire to defendant. Ethan had told the truth, all of it. The insurance fraud, the shell companies, the attempts on his life, the kidnapping of his sister. Every crime Victoria had committed, every life she'd destroyed, he'd laid it all out under oath. With his sister and niece safe, he'd had nothing left to lose and everything to gain by exposing her. Victoria was arrested within hours, bail denied, assets frozen, her empire collapsing in real time. The FBI reopened my case immediately. The manufactured evidence I'd presented was compared against Ethan's testimony. Independent investigators confirmed the shell company connections. Real crimes were uncovered beneath the layer of forgery. Within 2 weeks, my conviction was overturned. Within a month, I was released. Marcus Reed's case was reviewed. The evidence that had convicted him was found to have similar irregularities to mine. After 18 years, he walked out of prison on the same day I did. We stood together outside the prison gates. Two men who'd lost everything and clawed back just enough to survive. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Disappear, probably. Start over somewhere nobody knows my name. That's a lonely way to live. It's the only way I know." Marcus handed me a piece of paper with a phone number. "If you ever get tired of being lonely," he said, "call me. I'm starting a consulting firm, helping people who've been framed by powerful people, fighting the kind of cases the system ignores. Vigilante justice? Imperfect justice," he corrected. "The only kind some people will ever get." He walked away, leaving me standing in the sunlight for the first time in almost 2 years. My phone, a new one, provided by the FBI, buzzed with a message. From Ethan. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to walk away from everything connected to this nightmare and never look back. But a bigger part of me needed to know, needed to understand if what we'd had was ever real, or if I'd just been the most elaborate con of all. I typed back, "Where?" His response came immediately. "The place where it started. Part 16, full circle." The coffee shop was the same one where Ethan had given me the flash drive. Small, unremarkable, the kind of place where billionaires could sit unnoticed. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at the same table, staring out the window just like he had that day. But everything else was different. He looked older, thinner. The man who'd once commanded rooms with quiet confidence now looked like someone barely holding himself together. I sat down across from him without ordering anything. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Ethan said, "I didn't know if you'd come." "I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you." He looked at me, and I saw genuine pain in his eyes. "Aaron, I'm so sorry. For everything. For not being strong enough to protect you. For letting you go to prison. For—" "Stop," I interrupted. "I don't need apologies. I need to know if any of it was real." "What do you mean?" "Us," I said. "The friendship. The connection. The moments on your balcony when you said you didn't want to be alone anymore." I leaned forward. "Was any of that real? Or was I just another piece in whatever game you and Victoria were playing?" Ethan flinched like I'd hit him. "How can you even ask that?" "Because I don't know what to believe anymore," I said. "Marcus showed me evidence that you were part of the network. That your fortune came from the same illegal operations Victoria was running. That maybe you weren't her victim. Maybe you were her partner." "I didn't know," Ethan said desperately. "I swear to you, Aaron, I didn't know where that pharmaceutical money came from until you showed me Marcus's research. I thought it was a legitimate investment. I thought—" He stopped, took a breath. "But you're right that I wasn't innocent. I was willfully blind. I didn't ask the questions I should have asked because I liked the money. I liked the success. And by the time I realized what I was part of, I was already in too deep." "So you knew," I said flatly. "Before you met me, you knew something was wrong." "I suspected," he admitted. "Which is why I started collecting evidence. Not to be noble, Aaron. Not to expose corruption. But to protect myself. To have leverage if Victoria ever turned on me." He looked ashamed. "The flash drive I gave you? That was my insurance policy. I never planned to use it to help anyone but myself." "Then why give it to me?" "Because somewhere along the way, you became more important than my insurance policy," Ethan said quietly. "What we had, what we built together, that was the first real thing I'd felt in years. Maybe ever. And when I realized Victoria was going to destroy both of us, I had to make a choice." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. "I chose you. I gave you the evidence. I warned you. I tried to protect you even though it meant exposing myself. You still testified against me. To save my sister," he said. "To save a 7-year-old girl who had nothing to do with any of this. What would you have done, Aaron, if someone you loved was being held hostage? If the only way to save them was to lie?" I thought about it honestly. "I don't know. That's the only truthful answer either of us has left," Ethan said. We sat in silence for a while, watching people pass by outside the window. Normal people living normal lives. People who'd never been framed, never been blackmailed, never had to choose between love and survival. "Victoria's trial starts in 3 months," Ethan said finally. "They want me to testify again. And they want you there too." "I know. Are you going to do it?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to watch her burn. Part of me wants to never think about any of this again." Ethan nodded. "I understand." He stood up slowly. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said that night on the balcony. About not wanting to be alone. About wanting something real." He paused at the edge of the table. "If you ever decide you want that too, want something real with someone who's as broken and flawed as you are, you know how to find me." He walked toward the door. "Ethan," I called out. He turned back. "I don't forgive you," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I don't hate you either." He smiled sadly. "That's more than I deserve." Then he left. And I sat alone in that coffee shop, drinking cold coffee, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. Epilogue: Imperfect Justice. 2 years later, Victoria Hale was convicted on 14 counts of fraud, conspiracy, kidnapping, and attempted murder. She was sentenced to 47 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. She died there 18 months later. Heart attack, officially. Though Marcus had his theories about people in her network who couldn't afford for her to start talking. Ethan Hale disappeared after the trial, gave away most of his fortune to his sister and various charities. Last I heard, he was living in New Zealand under a different name, running a small bookstore. He sent me a postcard once. No message, just a picture of mountains and ocean and sky. I kept it. Marcus Reed's consulting firm grew into something real, something that actually helped people. He hired me 6 months after my release, and I've been working cases ever since. We help people who've been framed, who've been crushed by systems too big to fight. We use every trick Victoria taught us: careful investigation, strategic leaks, manufactured pressure. We fight dirty because clean fights only work when both sides play fair. It's not perfect justice, but it's justice. Rebecca Chen won a Pulitzer for her coverage of the Victoria Hale scandal. She never revealed the forged documents, never exposed what Marcus and I had done. She made a choice to let imperfect justice stand because perfect justice wasn't available. I think about that sometimes, about the lies we told to expose the truth, about becoming monsters to fight monsters, about whether the ends justified the means. I don't have good answers, but I sleep better than I did in prison. And some nights, when I close my eyes, I can still feel Ethan's hand in mine on that balcony, can still remember what it felt like to trust someone completely, even if it was only for a moment. That feeling, that brief, shining moment of connection, was real. Everything else, the cons, the betrayals, the manufactured evidence, the imperfect justice, that was just survival. And sometimes survival is the best victory you can hope for. I never saw Ethan again after that day in the coffee shop. Part of me wonders what would have happened if I'd followed him to New Zealand, if I'd chosen love over caution, if I'd decided that 2 broken people trying to build something real was better than 1 broken person staying safe. But I didn't make that choice. Maybe I should have. Or maybe some stories don't get happy endings. They just get endings, and you learn to be grateful for survival. This story, the one I've just told you, it's the truth, mostly. I've changed a few names, obscured a few details, protected a few people who helped along the way, but the core of it, the love, the betrayal, the impossible choices, the imperfect justice, that's all real. And if you're sitting there thinking I never saw that coming, if you're questioning everything you thought you believed about heroes and villains and truth and lies, good. That means you're paying attention. Because the real world doesn't have clear heroes and villains. It has people making impossible choices with incomplete information, trying to survive in systems designed to crush them. And sometimes the worst betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who loved you enough to try. If this story shocked you, if you didn't see that ending coming, if it made you question everything you believe about love and justice and truth, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because the next story won't just twist your heart, it might make you question whether anything is ever really what it seems. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what you need to hear.